Representative Paul Curtman from District 109 out around the Union. Paul, how are you, my friend?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for giving us a few minutes this afternoon. When I reached out to you earlier about this HB 151, which would, circumvent or fix people if they wanted to be fixed, to have a driver's license that fit the parameters of the Real ID law, you told me that you were not in support of it. So I want to give you a chance to explain why.
Sure. Well, when the Real ID Act was passed back in 2005, there was a lot of outcry from a lot of people on the left and the right from all across America. The act was passed. The Department of Homeland Security had begun to implement the procedures and the requirements and the standards for the Real ID. A lot of states pushed back. Right now, there's still 8 states that aren't complying. In 2009, the people of Missouri spoke to our legislature, and they passed a law that said that the state of Missouri will be one of the states that does not participate in the Real ID Act. The Real ID Act, I think, is highly intrusive. I think it really strengthens and empowers the government over the people. There's a lot of very intrusive, privacy-robbing requirements that the Department of Homeland Security wants every one of us to be carrying on these Real ID cards. So in 2009, the state passed a law that said we're not going to participate. The state passed a law that said we're not going to use this biometric data, so the state is logging the biometric features of all of our citizens. House Bill 151 directly repeals all of that, and in fact says that the state will be compliant with federal law. It says that the state will be logging all of our people's biometric information through the Department of Revenue, and I'm against that. I think that it robs us of the First Amendment, and especially when you look at the fact that unless you have one of these cards, you're not allowed to fly, you're not allowed into a public building. If you don't have a Real ID card, you're not allowed to visit the U.S. Capitol. You're not allowed to go inside the buildings there and visit with your congressman or your senator. I think it's a direct violation of the First Amendment when it comes to assembly or redressing our government for grievances. So for those reasons and others that I could get into a little bit more, but just generally speaking, those are the reasons why I'm against it.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to hear that. When you go on the DHS website, it tells you that participation in Real ID is voluntary, but then you find out that it may be voluntary as to whether or not the state wants to cooperate, but anybody from that state is basically blacklisted from flying, going to a federal facility, entering a military base, which of course would be a federal facility, or entering a nuclear power plant, which most of us will never do. But the bottom line is a lot of us fly, whether it's on vacation or work or whatever. You're going to, the only option then is just to get a passport and not worry about it, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure if a passport will allow you to fly or into a government building, but I do know that this particular bill, HB 151, would make us fully compliant with the mandates of the federal government, and I have a big problem with the federal government exercising that type of control over the people.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation recently when I talked about some of these situations where states are allowing sanctuary cities, and I'm like, well, maybe we ought to just cut off their funding, but then I don't like that blackmail kind of stuff. But in effect, that's what they're doing for states that haven't gone along with this.
Yeah, well, the federal government uses the state. They have both the carrot and the stick legislatively, and also through money, as far as, the carrot part of that analogy goes. When the state passed our law in 2009 saying that we were not going to be compliant with Real ID, Governor Nixon signed that bill into law. And then behind the legislator's back, he worked with the Department of Homeland Security and accepted funds and memos that were then used in Missouri to go ahead and start putting all these biometric cameras into place. So this is not about the consent of the governed. This is about control. This is about what the federal government wants. And just let me mention, Mark, there are people on the left and the right that are adamantly opposed to this. You have both the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ, and the ACLU, who have not recently, but a few years ago, done a joint press conference against it. Other organizations, institutions that are typically on the left of these issues, like AFL-CIO, they are with gun owners of America on their position against this bill. This is about big government and limited government and what it is we want in Missouri. And if the states that are against this would just push back, the federal government would kind of be at the mercy of the states, which is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
The states can nullify federal laws. Other states have done it when it comes to marijuana laws because the federal government needs the states to actually carry out some of these policies, and this is no different than those.
That's a good point. We're talking to Representative Paul Curtman from District 109. We got several extensions on this, right? And now it finally runs out next January, right?
I'm not sure whether or not we were one of the states that got an extension necessarily. They have passed extensions that say everybody, like for example, the no-fly, that goes into effect 100% for everybody in 2020. You can't be allowed into federal buildings. That goes into full effect in 2018. So between now and 2018, now and 2020, respectively, if you have a state ID, you're still good. But then they're going to start enforcing these federal laws in 2018 and 2020.
Yeah, and there are a number of states that are in the same ballpark that are considered to not be in compliance right now. A couple of them have extensions. You can go on the DHS website and look that up. So it's something to consider. Well, I'll be interested in checking in with you, Paul, and finding out whether or not this bill makes it out of committee.
Sure, sounds good, Mark.
Hey, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Yep, take care. Thank you.